time is now 7:02, and we're here for our regularly scheduled town board meeting. The first item on the agenda is roll call. Mrs. Green? Here. Mr. Ruggiero?
Present.
Mr. Manley?
Here.
Mr. Lobiango?
Here.
Mr. Piaquadio?
Here.
Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
Good question. Patrick, this is on already?
Yeah, so that's just a hard copy. Because there was colored maps, I decided to print one out for everyone.
No. That being said, no changes on that. 15, then Mark is going to explain that.
Oh, so what happened?
We're not going to take it off.
So now we're up to item 5, our public hearing.
I just noticed. Okay. So Lisa, has this public hearing been properly advertised?
This meeting has been posted on the town website since February 3rd, 2022. It was posted in Town Hall lobby on January 25th, 2022. It was advertised in the Mid-Hudson Times on February 3rd, 2022, and in the Orange County Post on January 28th, 2022. This complies with all of the requirements for a public hearing under New York State law.
Very good, Lisa. Thank you. Bob, has it been recorded now too?
Yep.
Okay, super. So we're going to make a motion to open this public hearing.
Second.
Mrs. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiango?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio?
Yes. Then I'm going to ask Mark Taylor, our town attorney, to give us a brief explanation of this public hearing, and then we're going to ask Dave Smith also. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The town of Newburgh is subject of a zoning map, which is adopted pursuant to its comprehensive plan. There are 5 residential districts and 3 commercial districts in the town, and this town is divided up among those base districts. Our zoning code also establishes certain overlay districts, and the topic of tonight is a local law which would amend the zoning code to add an additional overlay district. Now, overlay districts are typically areas which overlie the base zoning districts and provide for an additional use within the area of the overlay district. For example, we have a professional overlay district where professional offices are allowed in certain residential areas. In one case, the airport overlay district, actually an additional regulation with respect to elevations is established. Tonight's local law under consideration is one which would establish a hamlet or mixed use overlay district in the East Coldenham area. And as part of this presentation, we're going to address 4 aspects of the code. One is the mapped area and comprehensive plan background, which is being addressed in the code, and that is given by David Smith. Then I am going to provide a brief summary of the use, a brief summary of the base regulations, which have to do with yards, lot area, and the length. And finally, a brief summary of the special regulations which apply to the use which is addressed with the local law. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Smith, who is here by Zoom to discuss both the comprehensive plan and the mapped area. local establishment in the Lake District.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Supervisor, members of the board, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Excellent, excellent. Good evening. For the record, Dave Smith, Principal with Planning and Development Advisors, Planning Consultant to the town of Newburgh. Going back in history a little bit, I helped with the preparation of the town's comprehensive plan update, and that's part of my presentation tonight. Mark had given you some opening remarks about the zoning, and I think it's important to note that your zoning is supposed to be in compliance with your comprehensive plan. So the issue that the board is considering at this point is this hamlet overlay, and specifically going back into the Town of Newburgh Comprehensive Plan. And this document can be found on the town's website. And on page 3-47 of the Comprehensive Plan update, there is a specific discussion of what was then called hamlet area design. And it talked about the importance of hamlets within the town of Newburgh. And I think as part of that process, the comprehensive plan update process, was recognized that there isn't necessarily one town center for the town of Newburgh, but that it had a number of, and I think we classified, there were 14 different hamlets spread throughout the town. Each of them has their own unique identity and characteristics. And as part of the comprehensive plan was to help strengthen those hamlet areas and allow them to develop or have the potential for additional development that's sensitive to their specific area and their specific location. And in particular, in this one specific reference, East Coldenham is referenced as a potential area that could benefit from a design study that would incorporate kind of a larger area than what's currently being considered by the current zoning. But I think it's important that as part of the comprehensive plan update process, hamlet and hamlet area designs were an important element. And with that, there's discussion about later on in the action section, which is on page, just flipping through, page 61, 3-61 of the comprehensive plan. It does talk about, with hamlets, a hamlet design overlay district possibilities.
I don't know.
So
I
as
can't
a,
figure it out.
so with the implementation component of the comprehensive plan, there was a specific reference to creating zoning that may allow for this particular type of use or uses to occur within the town at selected locations. Now, as one of the follow-up documents to the comprehensive plan, the town of Newburgh also had a follow-up, and this is the town of Newburgh design guidelines. This document is also available on the town's website, and it was created a couple years after the comprehensive plan update. And I'm going to reference on page 64 of the design guidelines. There's a specific section that talks about hamlet area and open space design, and the design guidelines handbook was created in an effort to help the town, particularly the planning board, deal with design-related issues, because there were some concerns at the time that perhaps design in the built development wasn't being focused on in as much detail as perhaps there should be. So this hamlet area and open space design chapter also recognizes the at least 14 hamlets within the town of Newburgh, and it goes through and it has certain topic headings, including gateway design, design gateways to promote and preserve hamlet identity for people entering the hamlet area. It has another design component called design of community focal points, which may be an open space, it may be a water feature, it may be community buildings like a school or a post office. It has a third design component related to design of open space, given that the town of Newburgh has some fairly substantial open space areas, but how do you incorporate that as part of an overall development component so that you're preserving open spaces in the critical areas and allowing the development to occur where it's most appropriate. And then lastly, the design components under the hamlet area design include a design for pedestrian and vehicular safety. And I think this is part of the other aspect of the zoning is how do you integrate this development and make it more walkable or sustainable, I guess, is some of the new terminology that people are using with respect to land use development. And as you look at the proposed zoning, and I think Mark's going to get into this maybe in a little bit more detail, but there are some significant sections in the code, in the proposed code, that deal with these design issues, site design, buffers and screening, off-street parking and loading. There's a fair bit of detail on building architectural design standards and amenities, building and massing, roof design, lighting, materials and colors, pedestrian and bicycle access, landscaping, dealing with public places, and the different types of uses. So I think as part of the evaluation, the initial evaluation of the proposed zoning, I think it's very much in keeping with the goals and objectives that the town outlined initially as part of their comprehensive plan update, and then further defined and refined as part of your design guidelines booklet that helps assist the town with design-related issues. So, Mr. Supervisor, that provides a brief background of kind of the town's planning process with respect to hamlets and hamlet design and the incorporation of zoning and design aspects. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't had a chance that the two documents that I referenced are both available on the town's website, and certainly they could provide a very good resource going forward. Happy to answer any questions. Or actually, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to continue the presentation. Thank you.
All right. As I referenced previously, there is a map portion of the property or of the zoning code amendment, and there are 8 properties involved, all on the southern side of Route 17K, two to the west of Arbor Drive, including a large vacant parcel, and then the remainder to the east of Arbor Drive. The ones to the west of Arbor Drive are zoned R1 residential. That is primarily a single-family residential zoning, but there are other uses that are permitted in the zone. Just bear with me for a second. Pull to the right table. And those include, I'm sorry, my vision is getting worse. Those include conversion of existing dwellings to multi-family use, membership clubs, places of worship, substance abuse rehabilitation homes, community residences for the disabled, marinas, or what does border on Orange Lake and the Hudson, I believe. And in conjunction with those, marina townhomes, public utility structures, and 2-family homes. To the eastern side of Arbor Drive, the zoning is B, which is a commercial district. B stands for business. In that district, existing single-family dwellings and 2-family dwellings are permitted. Municipal buildings and membership clubs are permitted, subject to site plan review by the planning board. Uses include retail stores and personal service stores, health clubs and fitness facilities, business, professional and research offices and banks, heating and drinking places, indoor amusement establishments, motor vehicle service stations, and garages, washes and rental agencies, convenience stores with or without gasoline filling stations, hotels and motels, shopping centers, theaters, places of worship, business parks, public utility structures, affordable housing, senior citizen housing, mini malls, veterinarian offices, nursery schools for preschool children. In the R1 district, schools and colleges are also allowed, as that is subject to the educational facility district overlay district. Those tables are available on the town's website. The town zoning code appendixes to the town zoning code. So those are the uses that are currently allowed in the area that is subject to the overlay district, and the map is now up on the Zoom screen showing the proposed boundaries of the overlay district. Within the overlay district, there are essentially two elements of use that would be allowed. One is a hamlet mixed use center, and that contemplates buildings with first floor commercial uses and second floor residential uses. Commercial uses that would be allowed in those buildings are stores, shops, offices, personal service stores or uses, health club or fitness facilities, restaurants, convenience stores, banks, daycare centers, and nursery schools for preschool children, and similar commercial establishments. There's a maximum building size, which is established for those, which is 16,000 square feet. The residential units would be allowed at a density of 1 unit per 1,250 square feet of ground floor area within those buildings. The use could include, in addition, if an applicant proposes to donate parkland or recreational area to the town of 10 acres or more, a bonus housing, multiple family housing use in addition to the mixed use. And that means that buildings could contain multiple dwellings up to a maximum number of 40, and the number of units up to 40 would depend on the donated parkland. It would be based on a ratio or calculation that's tied to the usable area in the parkland. In other words, developable area would only be counted in determining the number of units allowed. Developable area in the parkland that was proposed to be donated, and the town board would have to approve that donation. And Mr. Supervisor, I don't know if you want me to respond to you.
No, I think there'll be a point for questions. You'll be over to that. This is a quick explanation, more or less, and you can ask all the questions you want shortly.
So the density calculation would be based on 4.5 units per acre of usable area in the proposed park or recreation area. So those are the two uses. including bulk regulations that our hamlet would establish a minimum 10-acre lot size for the use. There would be a minimum lot width of 300 feet, a minimum lot depth of 300 feet, a minimum front yard of 60 feet and rear yard of 60 feet, a minimum side yard of 50 feet, and both side yards would have to total 100 feet. Habitable floor area per unit, dwelling unit would be at least 1,000 square feet. The building coverage maximum would be 25% of the lot area. The building height maximum would be 35 feet. Now, I should note there is a provision in the specific regulations which would allow the planning board to increase that height to 45 feet of non-habitable area if the applicant were proposing peak roofs or a clock tower or steeples or something along that lines as part of the development. That would be at the planning board's discretion to do so. Maximum lot surface coverage would be 50% of the total area of the site. So that would include, for example, parking areas and the like. With respect to the specific design or regulations that apply to the Hamlet Center use, there is a buffer and screening requirement. Basically, the buffer and screening requirement is that which applies to the business zone. Business zone requires for proposed residential uses a minimum 50-foot buffer area, 20 feet of which could be driveways and the like, 30 foot closest to the boundary on a residential zone having to be vegetatively screened. Off-street parking and loading facilities would be dependent upon the area of commercial and residential components of a specific site proposal. Drive-through windows would be allowed on the side and rear of buildings. There are specific regulations which address storage, loading and docking areas, as far as where they can be located, building architectural design standards. There are building height and massing standards, and that's where the 45-foot allowance is included. There are road design standards, there are lighting standards, there are material and color standards. There are provisions with respect to pedestrian and bicycle access, and specifically in respect to this area, there is a provision that says that a provision should be made for connection of sidewalks to the intersection on Route 17K with East Coldingham School. There should be walking trails provided as well in plans. There are streetscape landscaping requirements. And there are additional requirements, but I don't see the sense in my going through the laundry list further for the residents. If there are specific questions, we certainly can address them.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Supervisor, just to indicate procedurally where the board is at, the board has indicated its intent to act as lead agency. It has not yet declared itself lead agency. Certainly, as part of that review, the board may consider additional environmental impacts or require further study of certain environmental impacts. For example, it might request that its engineers prepare a maximum build-out scenario for the area that's subject to the hamlet zoning, and then consider what the traffic would be at that maximum build-out compared to what would be or could be generated at maximum build-out under the underlying zoning. The board is not proposing to act tonight. There will be a transcript of this public hearing put up on the town's website, and the board will be considering comments for a period of 10 days, minimum period of 10 days following posting of that transcript report. Entertains whether to proceed further with the zoning amendment or not. So I just wanted to clarify where the board is procedurally.
Thank you, Mark. Before we open to the public, I just wanted to mention, in other words, this project in my mind is a mixed use, as they call it, residential and retail combined. It's in a way supposed to make it convenient for you to go to local stores and whatnot, be right there, and there'll also be residential units there. This particular case, there's 10 acres behind the property that will be given to the town for parkland if we so approve the project and whatnot. So that would make the plan behind the 10 acres used for nothing else ever. There were 2, maybe 3 informational meetings that went on last year by Zoom. I don't know how many has actually took part in that, but we have that all documented, the questions that came up. So, I mean, the town is like really doing their homework, but we don't want to put something on the neighborhood if they don't want it. No problem. So that's why we want to hear from you tonight. So whoever comes up to the mic, and unfortunately you got to come right up here in order to be on television. But if you come to the mic, just give us your name and address and your question, and we will either answer it or get back to you. So I don't know what to be first. Hey, Bobby, can you make sure the mic is turned on here?
Yes.
It is turned on? Got it. Okay, someone's got to be first if we're going to. This is Kanye. Floor is yours.
And that's been 15 years. Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. It's been a few years.
It's been a few
John
years.
Esberg.
It's been a few years.
Good to see you.
It is good to see you. First of all, I want to get my bearings on the relation of this discussion to the actual documents that we approved about 15 years ago. When the first discussion of master plan came up, the first revision of the master plan came up, and the creation of the hamlets. And there were 2 or 3 of the hamlets that were elucidated as to having purpose, but East Coldenham wasn't elucidated. It was always to come up at another time. Is this indeed that other time? It's a long time ago, Mark.
Yeah, as Mr. P. Quadio alluded to, there is an owner of property in the area that has approached the town with respect to implementing what was at least contemplated as a potential avenue within the comprehensive plan. Now, Mr. Smith did not mention the fact that following the adoption of the comprehensive plan, there was a process undertaken that involved a public information meeting for residents of Colden Park, which involved studying that particular hamlet. And there was a draft document that was produced by the town's consultants, but never formally adopted or accepted by the town board, which did discuss the possibility of mixed-use zoning as one avenue of addressing both the
So-
pedestrian-friendly nature of hamlets and connectivity with existing residential areas, and the other town objective of providing housing, which was one of the comprehensive plan objectives. And
However, it did not elucidate the intent and purpose of the use of Hamlet in terms of East Coldenham. Is this indeed that process now?
actually, that particular draft did, and
Said
that
it did
particular
get
study, correct. This is certainly an avenue of implementation for the comprehensive plan. It doesn't, is it the only possible avenue? No, but it is an avenue of possible implementation that the board is considering.
This is Gagne also, I think Scott Manley actually has that report from way back when. And
Thank you,
maybe we'll
Scott.
get it
Maybe
to
I'll
you.
look at it.
We'll get it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Can I continue? All right. My major concern has to do with the closeness of a multi-purpose area, so very close to the school. I think anyone who drives up and down with 17K and passes the high school and notes the confusion as a result of Dollar General being directly across from one of the schools in our school district might relate to this. Now, we have easily had the state put in probably 4 or 5 additional traffic lights as we pass from Newburgh into Montgomery. And some of them are in very close quarters of each other. This would put, in my mind, a need for a different kind of traffic control. So that is an issue I would like to see addressed. I would like to know what the answer to that is, and if indeed it is not, if anybody sees it as a question, that it could be studied. The business about parklands in exchange for additional acreage. I'm not sure where the particular parcel of property was, but it was on that side of Colden Park that was deemed too marshy to put roads through. And indeed, would that still be the case? Because no work has been done there to drain those marshes. Nor, in my opinion, being environmentally concerned, should there be. So I am aware that there are many people who live in our area that want to preserve that nature. So whether you exchange that, if you exchange with the builder, you're still going to infringe on what was previously found to be not good land to build with or access into. So I think that's important to consider. Also, to that height issue, if it says 35 feet, it means 35 feet, not 45 feet. So what are you going to do about that? I don't care if it's a pretty cupola. It's still 45 feet. And that needs to be dealt with air traffic control. Has that been done? I think that's enough for now. I'm sure other people might have
Thank you.
adjacent conversations.
And again, we're here to listen, and we're not
Thank you for
necessarily
that.
we're not gonna answer every question that
I
comes up, 'cause we
understand
don't have
that,
the answers.
But I see it's being noted, so I
Yes,
hope to see it come up in literature.
Very
Thank you.
good. Thank you. Anyone else next? This lady here? Just again, just want to know where you live and your name.
No,
We can put it in the record.
I'm familiar with the traffic buildup because I was in Montgomery for
You might have to
7 years.
come a little closer to
For
the
7
mic.
years.
They're not gonna hear you.
But
by the
I'm,
way.
Excuse me, I'm
your
sorry.
name?
I see there's people on Zoom raising their hand. If you want to tell them that they'll be after,
After the in-person, then we're gonna go to Zoom.
yeah, well, just so they know.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm back 2 years now.
Your name and address
I'm Kathy
first.
Miller, I'm in 20 Pierce's Road, right connected here, I'm in Garden County. My only question is it true they're putting a casino in the Newburgh Mall? Because I'm here to object. When I was out in Montgomery, I was the only person that showed up to the meeting there when developer came and was gonna put a casino over there, and it never turned out. And,
But can I mention one thing? I don't want to cut you off. This public hearing has to do with the overlay of residential and commercial at Golden Point. That's the only reason we're speaking here. It's being recorded. This is not, so I appreciate your comment.
The
about
whole
casino.
meeting's about-
This is not the casino meeting. This is the meeting of,
okay, is there gonna be a meeting for that right here, over here, and
those meetings are already held and the planning board's held them and that's.
okay, then I just want to know who approved it, because I think it's ridiculous, and it's a death sentence for not just the town, but for the city. And to talk about architects, it's about time you got one for the Newburgh Animal Control, because we were promised it back in 2000, and it was a rat trap back then, with holes in the walls, and it hasn't been done. And, all this talk about building, and my last remark is the steeples in Newburgh. Newburgh has more steeples than anywhere. They're known as, my brother-in-law gave me the booklet about that. They're known as the city of steeples. And, you just don't know what you have if you're putting a casino in the town.
All right, thank you for your comments. Could someone else want to speak? Come on forward, identify yourself on this topic. We got 3 at once now. So you first, you're closer.
My name is Tim Skay, and I'm 49 Westwood Drive in the Golden Park. I just had a couple of questions. One was on the this discrepancy between 45 feet between the main plan and the bonus plan. The main plan talks about 2-story buildings there, which how you get to 45 feet in a 2-story building, I'm not sure, but when you talk about the bonus plan, does that 2-story limit also apply? In other words, it sounds like those are apartment houses we're talking
Those are subject to a 35-foot limit without planning board ability to raise the 35 to 45, as it has with the mixed-use buildings where potentially would want to include some sort of architectural feature.
about. Okay, so that's also a 2-story.
35 is a typical 2-story.
The second thing was there was a plan presented a couple of years ago for the section of land that went from Racket Road and a piece of this where the nudie bar was, and then on back between Pilot and Wynwood. And there was a fairly large proposal for that, and I don't know if that ever got fully approved. And it was a zoning change, and is that related in any way to this? Would they be the same kind of thing?
If you could call it the map,
Bobby, can you pull that map up? It's a separate
some
piece of land.
of the parcels fronting Route 17K may be the front portion of that property, but the rear portion is not proposed to be incorporated within this zoning amendment, although I have to tell you, the owner of that property has expressed interest in what's being proposed here.
Yeah, because he
No,
was
no.
on that presentation a couple years ago.
Yeah, but no zoning amendment has been considered with respect to the balance of that property. No.
Bobby, can you get the map up or you?
That's, if Dave Smith, if you can.
Yeah.
Dave, can you get a map?
Yeah.
So some of those,
That was
Properties
going to
on
be,
right-hand
I'm
side.
sorry, I know nobody can see it in there. That was going to be basically here.
right,
At one point, it was going to be the casino or something like that. Like,
There's been a lot of proposals on
yeah,
this.
yeah, but that was basically back in here from Pilot or whatever on. And they're going to put a light there. And it was kind of a mixed use proposal. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
better than a casino. I don't.
Yeah.
I
as
don't know
I,
what happened to- And it sounds almost like what you're proposing here, but
Yeah.
it seems unconnected. So.
except for the area, the front, which you can see is within the boundaries of. Yeah, no rezoning has been proposed for that property, as I mentioned, among the uses that are allowed in the business district are senior housing and affordable housing. So potentially the owner could propose those in conjunction with business uses that are permitted.
So that's at the moment, that's just kind of separate.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So we had two others jump up at the same time. Does one want to come forward? There you go. You know, just your address and name, I guess.
Vito Cesare, 3 Arbor Drive, Colton Park, been there since 71. Is this also for statements as well as questions?
Absolutely.
Well, let me start with the quality of life in Colton Park has deteriorated significantly with the advent of additional places that have been put in, including Pilot. And I'd like to just address a few things.
You know, before you do, you
Yes.
can just step closer to the mic. Maybe you can pull it down a little bit too, like this. For us tall guys, you gotta do that.
Thank you. I'll use my principal voice. The size of a building somehow seems to be in question. We have a 2-story building across at the entrance of Colton Park, and that's supposed to be 2 stories. When it's placed upon the ground, it's now 3 stories. Part of why I say this is that what you put in to the height development of your apartments, and that's what they'll be, will have a significant impact. I can no longer see a sunset anymore, and the quality of light there is bad. There's traffic overflowing from that. I don't know how that was approved as a 2-story, and I don't know who gave the recent upgrade to it. But I want to come back to the first and basic thing. I'm against this development. As it is now, you cannot get past from 84 to Colton Park and past there without significant traffic delays. And the corner of Rock Cut and Stone Castle is just bad. It's an accident waiting to happen. By Cumberland Farms, as it is now, people, without question, every single day, when someone's trying to make a left turn to go down to past Cumberland Farm on that side, they're driving up on the sidewalk and on the road by, I guess it's a, I was going to say the Sunflower Farm or whatever it is. That's just an accident to be waiting to happen. The number of people that you're trying to put that could be allowed in this development, and that's what I consider the term hamlet. This is an oxymoron. This is an obscene definition. A hamlet is a tiny village of 6 or 8 houses without a central structure. Has anyone even looked at the definition? This is just basically a mixed use business, residential, apartment dwelling situation. That's not a hamlet. I don't know who came up with that terminology, but it's not a hamlet. Colton Park was a residential area. It got its first, and that's why I went with the first part of this, the house on the end. That was a house turned into an office building. Now it's a law firm. That was a house supposed to be built. this will definitely change the quality. First of all, no one's going to be walking to stores from Colton Park, not to there. We don't even know what's there. It basically seems to be almost a subset or segregated village per se. Senior citizens would not be able to really walk there. Colton Park people are not going to be walk there. There's only one place I know in Orange County where people walk as a subset. So I question what type of individuals and what kind of circumstances you're expecting to live here. That's my first. So the quality of life, just with congestion, I won't get into the water runoff. I won't talk about taxes. But my question would be, are there any tax circumstances that these people will get as tax incentives? As a superintendent of school, I saw all kinds of tax incentives and deferments for businesses. And as soon as those incentives left, the business left. And the taxpayer picked up the rest. You have water and sewer. I get notices all the time about the water quality from the town of Newburgh. That it's substandard. I don't know how many years that's been going on. And I know we have a separate sewer system that needs upgrading. So my question is, has that been looked at as far as the financial impact on the residents? Additional people need water, additional people need water and sewer. You have more people going back and forth. Recently, it was known that both the town and the city of Newburgh have received numerous sex offenders. I have no idea what the situation is going to be, but that depends on the quality and whether or not these are rental apartments, condominiums that people buy, etc. That's a concern as a former superintendent and principal about safety. Children walk to Colton School. I don't know what the impact on the school district will be. I don't know if there'll be children there. But mixed zone, if it's just businesses, there's no problem for your school district. But if you have children and they're not paying taxes or they're senior citizens paying less, it's an impact on my school taxes. So I started with, I really don't think that this is a good thing. I don't think it's named right. I think it should be named exactly what it is. It's a zoning variance, mixed zone usage, and it does not benefit the people of Colton Park. Thank you.
Just a second before you sit down.
Sure.
You're standing there, the Norman Rockwell, speaking at town hall. You see the person?
Yeah.
It's just like you to be standing, and I thought it was the Norman Rockwell in front of you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, whoever next. And if you could just name and address.
James Cavariccio. I'm at 5 Arbor Drive. I'm another property in Colton Park as well. My family's been in Colton Park. We're originals. A few points I just wanted to clarify. Not too keen on legal jargon, but so the possible increase to 45 feet. Anything above 35 feet would not be usable space. Okay, so that turns these, what this letter we got in the mail seems like we're going to get 2-story structures. That turns these into 3-story structures. There was another comment on limitations on colors, materials, things of that nature. Would a pitched roof structure be required, or without that variance, would they have the ability to go to a 3-story structure with a flat roof?
The mixed use proposal is for there to be ground floor commercial and second floor residential. There's no provision for a third floor. The 35-foot limitation applies to the residential homes. Housing, there's no provision. for an increase to 45 feet with respect to those purely residential buildings.
Okay, so that would allow the first floor commercial space to have 2 stories of residential above it?
No,
No.
it's ground floor, second floor. So
Okay.
that's correct.
Another question in regards to the donation of 10 acres. That would allow up to 40 units. That's over multiple buildings,
Potentially, yes.
just because it contradicts the 60,000 square foot maximum if we're looking at 1,000 square foot per unit.
The 60,000 maximum applies to the mixed use.
And then I'm assuming this would be a separate hearing, obviously, but would this set precedent for lot, I think it's 8825.22 behind, what is now, it would be behind Westwood, or I apologize, Wynwood. Because at this current structure, I don't even, does this involve an easement for any type of access to that property?
I'm not sure. Could you just point out? the
Yeah,
property
so this, I
reference? Sorry.
believe from what I saw on the tax map, this is
Oh,
8522.
Yeah, that's outside the proposed boundaries for this overlay district. Now, as I mentioned to the other gentleman, the owners of that property do have an interest, have expressed an interest in this zoning change.
Okay, but once we set a precedent for hamlet zoning in the Coldenham district, that's, I mean, that's pretty much a given, right?
No,
It would be a
it's-
completely separate hearing.
Yeah, each area would be subject to the hearing. There's zoning is a legislative act. There's precedent doesn't apply to legislative acts.
And then you mentioned the 50-foot buffer with 20 foot being a true buffer, 30 feet, with 20 of that being allowed to be a driveway. Would that also be allowed to be a parking lot?
I'm sorry, I would have to flip pages to find it, so I can give you that answer.
Okay.
after the fact.
And then the other concern was loading, unloading areas, docks, drive-throughs of that nature would be allowed on the sides of these structures. Would it be allowed on the side of structures backing existing dwellings?
If a proposal had a side or rear yard facing an existing building, that's a possibility.
Okay.
That's certainly something for the board to
Yeah,
consider.
we had one regarding a warehouse in the past, and that part of that would have been the bulk of the lighting, loading bays, all that thing on the opposite side of the property than the current residences.
You know, one thing I want to say too is, what we're doing here really in this public hearing is the concept of the overlay. As far as what's going to go where and drive, that's going to be planning board stuff. If it even-
I understand, I just, if it's allowed under the hamlet zoning, I know that with that current, the previous warehouse provision that the owner went for, it was included that there would be specific lighting situations and loading areas away from the residences. I think that's, I mean, obviously with major concerns here are going to be traffic, you know, additional commercial, we have tax issues with that, and then buffer zones for everybody in the development. Like those are our major issues. So, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ian Cowan, at 27 Wynwood. Like all my neighbors said, we all have the same concerns, but one thing that wasn't brought up that I'm very concerned about is the actual outlet. So we're talking about building apartments. We're talking about giving up acres of land for environmental use, which has already been zoned not usable to begin with. So kind of in my mind sounds like one hand washes the other kind of thing. So is there actually going to be a park there? Are people going to be able to go there? Is there going to be something, or is this just unusable space that they're donating that they can't use anyway to build more apartments? And are we going to have any restrictions on what these apartments go for? Are these going to be Section 8 housing? Are they going to be, government subsidized housing that's going to affect all of our property values, our school systems, and all that stuff? So those are my main concerns that weren't brought up.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else we have? Okay, here we go, Mr. Brew.
Andrew Brewer, 5 Westwood Drive, Town Newburgh.
along my property line between 3 and 5, Westwood Drive. There's a stream running through there. And on heavy rains, etc., the stream overflows the curbing, overflows the street, and water is up to the very top of, it's flowing right over the road, which is eroding it, okay? And number 2, the most important thing is, this is going back a little bit in history to attorney here. On November 13, 2020, the hamlet zoning is intended to enhance the quality of the surrounding community it serves. East Colton Ham community. Item number 7, it is a valuable tool in elevating the use of the parcels in the neighborhoods that are deteriorating and undesirable. And I take offense of that, okay? I got a pretty decent home. And to say that my home or any home in Colton Park, Holiday Park, or even as far as Fleetwood, that home is a man's castle, okay?
Mr. Brew, this town board member said that had to be at an informational meeting, right?
Yes.
Not us.
But this gentleman,
No.
well, anyway, the bottom line is, okay, there are some people within Colton Park who have the necessary funding to take care of their property. Some have because of the seniors in the property. Some of those seniors, that's all they got is Social Security, okay? They don't have the money to improve their property. They do the best they can. But to say that this, as I read it, that just went through me like a knife. It's wrong to say that.
So I'm not sure what document you're referring to.
What?
Well, it's not something that the town.
I know that, but this is coming from the developer. That's who it's coming from. Okay?
I understand you're taking over Twitter.
I agree with you. The houses and everything, and I've known Mr. Brew a long time. His daughter was my deputy receiver of taxes, so I've known him a long time. The houses out there and the people that are out there are great people.
And they deserve, the terminology that was used is wrong, okay? It's like, everybody's supposed to have enough money constantly to keep their places up, but some people don't have that. And to make comments like this, and it's coming for the proposal for the developer, they're saying everything to make it look nice and flowery for everybody concerned, but that's not the case.
But
Thank you, Brad.
Mr. Brew, I know that everybody on this board, none of them feel that way or would even say something like that about you, Larry. Because I know them all that sit here.
Mr. Brew, do you have something other than that?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right, come on up.
First of all, I'm horrible public speaking, and I get very nervous, and I lose track of what I'm trying to say. But I have 3 things I'd like to say.
Just give us your name, sir.
I'm sorry. My name is Tom Murphy. I'm in 13 Fleetwood Drive. And I just want to point out where that is on the map. Right about here. I didn't receive any information about this development. I've learned about it from Facebook, and just hearing everybody talk about it on Facebook. I think I should have gotten one. There's one road that goes into Golden Park, Arbor Drive, and I think there's a lot of people underneath me that haven't received any information about this letter that went out with this map. The other thing I'd like to say is I drive by Pilot every day. 5 o'clock in the morning, the traffic lights back up. There's tractor trailers sleeping on the shoulder of the road, shoulder of the entrance ramps, because the Pilot gets overfull. So I guess they send them, they say, you can't sleep here. So we're going to put you out onto our, get lost, go somewhere else. And they sleep on the shoulder of the road. So you have 3 tractor trailers you're driving by. It creates a dangerous traffic
situation, because the cars that are trying to get on the ramp, and that's kind of what you do. So that's the other thing I wanted to say. Pilot is really affecting that intersection. The tractor trailers run the red light from Pilot out onto 17K. They slow all the cars coming down, and then it just creates jam. The other thing is, I take my son, since he was 5 years old, I actually taught him how to ride a bicycle at East Coldenham Elementary School. I taught him at that intersection, you cannot trust that a car is going to stop. And almost every time the light turns red, 3 or 4 cars go right through that red light. I said, you're not going to win. Even though you have the right of way, you're not going to win if you get hit by a car. 55 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, I would say those cars are going through those intersections. Trying to beat the next light, it's pretty crazy sometimes. But that's what I want to say.
Thank you. You're good. You're good.
I can tell you one thing, sir. I wouldn't have my kids on that highway.
Oh, this one pretty cool guy. We walk our bicycles across the road.
I would stay right in Golden Park.
It's safe. The school that I put
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Do we have anyone else in house? Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Charles Bissinger. I live at 43 Wynwood. One of my main concerns with any kind of development going in up there, especially when they're talking about a mix of commercial and residential, is going to be enough parking spaces up there for the residents, their guests, the employees, the deliveries, and the shoppers. One of my main concerns is if people don't park, they start parking on Arbor Drive. There's only one artery into Colden Park and out of Colden Park. If cars are parked on Arbor Drive, that's blocking our emergency exits and entrance. So whatever goes in is going to have adequate enough parking to keep our area safe. Especially on Halloween.
And not to interrupt, but that's already happening.
Yeah, here's one thing we can't do. We can't speak out because this is a stenographer, and if you talk, she don't know what to do, how to put down who said what. So you'll have a turn to ask again, but go ahead. That's it.
It's my concern that we stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So anyone else who hasn't already spoke once that wants to in-house? Okay. I see no one else in-house that wants to speak again. So Bobby, we can go to Zoom. And I'm going to ask those at home. We certainly want to hear from you. So again, you would identify yourself and name and address. And if, in other words, I want to hear from you, but we don't have to hear the same things over and over. Everything has been recorded. It's recorded. The stenographer is going to record it. So everyone wants to keep saying traffic, traffic, traffic. That's fine, but we get it, you know. So, all right, you want to open it up to somebody, Bobby?
All right, we'll start with Danny. I'm gonna ask him to unmute.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Kelly. I live in Colden Park on Sandalwood Drive. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
3 issues. First off, zoning shouldn't be done in a spotted fashion. You should be looking at the whole of the area rather than these 2 particular lots. But with that said, across from Racket Road, that lot, I think we should all be grateful for the owner who took the time and the money to tear what was there down. He did us all a big favor. Secondly, on that lot, its own business, most certainly this is a better use than a lot of business uses that could go into that. So I really have no objections there for this overlay on that lot. My main objection to that lot, it's also zoned for adult use. Across the street is also zoned for adult use. That should be changed. Those 2 adult uses close to the school should be removed. If I know you don't want to hear about traffic, but across the street from that particular lot is zoned interchange business. To mix the 2, clearly traffic is just going to be overwhelming. So if you're going to have an overlay like this, put it across the street also. This way you would have some type of continuity. My other comment would be across from Coldenham School, that lot, which is now zoned residential, just let sleeping dogs lie. The people in Colden Park are not going to benefit from a multi-business use there. We would prefer just to have residential there. It's not going to overwhelm the area, and it's not going to overwhelm our water systems or our streams. So those are my only comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Bobby, can we go to the next one?
Darren Weber.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Darren Weber. I work for the owner of Stewart Commons LLC, which owns several lots across the street from Racket Road that Danny was just talking about. Danny, you're welcome for taking down those buildings. It was an eyesore. It was about time that was taken care of. So we're happy that that's done. My question, it kind of echoes on what Danny was saying. I'm just curious how the overlay district was determined, and why some parcels are included in one, why some are not. For example, 30.1 and 30.2, which we own, is included, but 25.22, 26, 31, and 32 are not included. 31 and 32 just seems like, you know, that's a no-brainer. If you're going to have the overlay district go all the way down to pilot, you know, why wouldn't those be included? But they weren't. So that's pretty much my question. Why does that area stop abruptly and it's not including some of the other parcels?
All right, I don't know if we're going to answer your question, but we'll take the comment at that and get back to you when the questions are answered. You have anything else?
We don't know why this stops where it does.
Well, what is the line stop?
How is it determined to include the parcels that it includes?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we were approached by, or the town board was approached by a property owner with respect to their particular property. We then referred the matter to the town's consultant planner, Mr. Smith, who is on board to actually look at what would be an appropriate area to potentially include within the Hamlet overlay zone. All of the parcels that are included in the overlay zone have frontage on 17K. I believe the eastern end ends with the parcel that, or with the P district boundary, but I don't know if I'm, after you get off, potentially we can ask Mr. Smith with respect to his recommendation as far as the boundaries go.
You want to speak to Dave Smith?
Dave
now?
Yeah, let's see if they can comment on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did you want me to provide a response?
If you don't mind, Dave.
Okay, so just looking at the markings, you mentioned that the properties in the proposed area all front on 17K. And I think part of what we were looking at is, if you see in the graphic, there are these, you know, a V, and those related to vacant properties. I think part of what this zoning district is intended is that those properties are underutilized, and so that's why they were included along with the balance of the property to the west of Arbor Drive. There was, you know, no, at least on my part, there was no reflection of ownership. It was just looking at the parcel size, looking at the land use activity, and understanding that, you know, there may be some value in allowing for this type of zoning to occur where you've got the access to 17K. You also have the vacancies and the underutilized aspect of the properties.
Thank you, Dave.
What about lots 31 and 32, which are right next to that have 17K frontage?
That's up to the board if they want to include those. That's part of the purpose of having tonight's public hearing, is to get input from the public and to say, perhaps you should include more or less area as part of the proposed zone.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So Bobby, can we go to somebody else?
Mr. Smith, if you could stop sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think, so I'm gonna say, anyone who knows how to raise their hand on Zoom, please do it now, so it speeds up the process. But the next will be Nancy Tuttle. Asked to unmute, and she wants to speak.
Hi, I'm Nancy Tuttle. I live at 16 Westwood, and you have a 50-foot buffer zone. My backyard would butt up against the development, and I'm just wondering, in that buffer, it being 50 feet, 30 of it could be grassland or whatever, and 20 of it, up to 20 feet, would be considered like roadway or whatever. Are there any rules that state that fencing has to be put in? Because I'd like to protect my backyard, and I really don't want anyone looking over into my backyard. I would like to maintain my privacy.
But I think again on that one, we'll take it under consideration. We realize that again, it's going to be a planning board thing too, if ever it gets to a planning board, I think.
I would like my backyard to remain private, and I think I speak for the rest of the neighbors that are going to be bordering this development. Thank you.
We have a separation between retail and residential in the code currently. But
Yes, and as I mentioned, this is basically implementing those requirements, but the requirements that apply are actually stricter for residential business zones than for commercial. Certainly the board can consider including a fencing requirement. It seems inappropriate.
They're showing me here now, I guess, that your residence is really where the park area would be, so. If we pulled it up on the screen, what was your address again, please?
16 Westwood.
16 Westwood.
You want the park area.
Right.
You won't have anything.
You wouldn't have any, the development wouldn't be by it, because it would be that land developed, donated to the town for park. Stay untouched. So.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
All right. Someone else we got, Bobby?
Chris Ty, if they want to speak, they can unmute.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Chris Ty, 64 Westwood Drive. Mark, a question for you, and I apologize if this has been addressed. It's been a little hard to hear what's going on in the room in Zoom. But regarding that 45-foot height restriction, I should say the 35-foot, and it could be determined, if I understood right, that the planning board could make an exception to go higher. Does the town board have the ability, if it passes the zoning, to absolutely restrict that number to 35 feet so that exceptions cannot be made?
Depending on the materiality of a change, it potentially would require a second public hearing, but yes, it certainly could restrict the 35 feet. Now, property owners do have the ability to apply for variances from the zoning board of appeals, from almost any bulk requirement, and certainly they could apply for a variance from a height limitation. We see it frequently in the town.
Would the same be true of if they were to go for, say, a density bonus? The town board wouldn't necessarily have the ability to restrict them now for going for that sort of thing. That's something that is strictly up to the planning board. Do I understand that right?
There are two uses which allow density bonuses. Those are for senior and for affordable. Neither of those is permitted in the R1 district. There's no provision that would allow density bonuses for mixed use proposals, and there's no provision to increase the cap for the parkland bonus housing above 40.
Okay. In the master plan, there is reference to, prior to any potential zoning change, a study potentially being done to do that sort of thing. I don't know that this is a question. I think I just want to point out that that is something that is actually in the master plan, and the board might want to consider if it does move forward on that. And likewise, that being said, would it be wise to conduct some sort of traffic study in conjunction with this? If not, would that be a question for the planning board to compel a potential developer to do maybe a traffic study that might be above and beyond, or would they be strictly limited to what's required by law?
Well, in my presentation, I mentioned the fact that once the town board assumes the lead agency, it certainly can, in the environmental review process, it certainly can consider potential traffic impacts of the zoning amendment, and commission basically want to be a maximum build out under the hamlet zoning versus maximum build out under what's permitted presently. As part of a site specific review, certainly traffic is always a consideration, and it's typically the planning board, which is the lead agency in that process, and it would be up to them to determine whether to require or what level of traffic study to require in connection with specific proposals. It would be up to the planning board in connection with any particular application.
Okay. And regarding the zoning, and again, I do apologize because it was a little hard to hear on this end, everything that was said, but Mark, if I heard you right, doing this kind of overlay does not create a precedent for other zoning around the town or similar zoning? Specifically, what I'm thinking of is, would that allow a project like Pilot to do or request something more than that they already have on their site because this zoning was allowed?
No, so zoning, again, is a legislative act. It does not create precedent. It's a discretionary act by the town board, and that is not an administrative decision or anything along those lines. It's discretionary on the board's part as to whether to enact legislation or not. So no, there is no precedent created by a zoning amendment which applies to a specific area.
And-
Scott, I see your hand up, but we gotta go through this before we get back to some people's place. So just stand by.
I just have one more quick question. Again, Mark, this was touched on before. Someone mentioned something about spot zoning. Could you just speak to that a little bit regarding whether or not something is in fact spot zoning like this?
Certainly when only one property or property is involved in a zoning amendment, it is open to a potential challenge due to its the principle of spot zoning. Although there is some precedent with respect to if a rezoning or zoning amendment is contemplated in a comprehensive plan as to whether that constitutes spot zoning or not. In this case, you have 8 separate properties which are the subject of the potential zoning amendment, which extend of Colton Park. So I think any sort of challenge to this particular amendment as spot zoning would have a difficult hurdle to jump over to reach a conclusion that it is spot zoning.
Okay, that was my last question. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have Edith.
Edith.
Hi, this is Edith's husband, Paul Ng. We live in 11 Holiday Park. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So we moved here about a year ago from New Windsor, Knox Village. We moved here because it was a better quality of life. We moved because right next to us, there was a girl that was murdered because I don't know what the reasons were, but someone broke into her window and shot up the whole apartment. And we're 20 feet away from that. And what you're describing in this mixed use zoning, it could mean that there could be more apartment buildings being built in this area. Substance abuse rehabilitation across from the schools, across from neighborhoods. It could mean different businesses, bars, restaurants. That could mean, rowdy crowds. That could mean a lot of different things. We also have issues in this neighborhood with water issues, soil erosion from the land that's supposed to be allocated to be zoned. There's a hill that they plowed where it allows the water to flow right down towards our properties. And there's basically standing water there year round. And the outside area is basically unusable because there are mosquitoes and other insects are undesirable. So having this area zoned for a parking lot or a business will allow for more soil erosion and more water to go into our properties. So I was wondering if you could talk to that.
I think we can take your comments under consideration. Again, we're not here to answer every question, but they will be answered at the end if this project moves forward, I think, really. Because, there is a thing called MS4, and how much water you can discharge up your property, right, Pat, the engineer?
Yeah,
So,
during the
that
planning
will
board.
be addressed going forward. It's not, any property will be, right?
Yeah, during the planning board review process, we would evaluate any drainage impacts from any of these projects.
All right, thank you. Somebody else have their hand up?
You got Craig?
Yeah, this is Craig. I also live in Holiday Park. I'm 13 Holiday Park. I'm Paul's neighbor. And I've been in here for 32 years and it's been quiet. My grandkids can ride their bicycle up and down the driveway and even out into the road. Now, the development appears to be going right up along the east side of Holiday Park. Is this going to become through traffic off of 17K into the development? I mean, that's not what I bought into 32 years ago when I bought into the house. I'm in a little cul-de-sac, dead end, nice and quiet, like I like it. And I don't want it to be the Indy 500 when rush hour kicks in to go in and out of development.
Greg, I'm with you on that. As far as I know, there's no interconnect between Colton Park and this piece of land.
Holiday Park.
No.
Okay.
We can't hear you. Oh, he's muted.
Okay. I see Clay had their hand up before. They lowered it, but I'll see if they want.
No, that was just me hitting the wrong thing, Gil.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another gentleman. Went down the left.
Yeah, but he already spoke, so we gotta go through everyone first.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. Your hand up, we'll get back to you.
David Bain.
Okay, David.
If you want, for you.
You there, David?
Yeah, they're not unmuting, so.
You gotta unmute.
Yeah,
otherwise
but
we
if
can't.
they don't wanna talk, they don't have to
Okay,
unmute.
okay. All right, so we're going to next.
Donette?
Okay, Donette?
Hi, I actually didn't put my hand up to say anything, but since you called on me, okay. Gosh. How much do you guys know about this so far? Do you know, like, of the number of units, how many are going to be designated for seniors or low income?
As far as the zoning goes, there's no provision with respect to designation of units as senior.
Okay, so we're not sure about that. So the issue about the 35 feet versus 45 feet, I just don't understand why. If something was already planned where the first level was going to be mixed retail, commercial, and the second level was going to be residential, and it's planned and it's 35 feet, why now 45 feet? What's the purpose? If it's not going to be more housing there and it's not going to be more stores, what is it for? Signs? What's going to go there?
The stated purpose was to afford the ability to incorporate architectural elements that were not occupied, but potentially add to the appearance of the project. For example, a clock tower or a steeple, something like that.
Interrupt the view. So just interrupt the view, basically, right? Like the folks are saying, like they want to see their sunset and things like that. But if it's, going that much further, really for no purpose, other than to, hurt the quality really for the people who are there already, then why do it? If it was going to benefit everyone in some way, maybe they might want to consider that, but, sounds like it's kind of questionable. That's all.
The height factor we've heard several times, and I'm gonna go to sleep thinking about the height of this.
Well, you know, that's part of the job, Gil, you know? Sometimes we have to hear things we don't want to hear.
Do you have anything else that, other than the height?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just say that we have to go through everyone to make sure.
Unless they physically put their hand up.
Well, I'm gonna ask them to unmute and wait about 5 seconds. If they don't unmute, we'll move on. There's Peter Zawitowski. John Bauza.
I have no questions.
Yeah, Beth. There's a lot on the list here, so.
I have no questions.
Go ahead.
The one fellow with his
Oh,
hand
just, I
up.
have no question. Yeah, you want to go back to Danny?
Yeah, let's go back to, he's had his hand up for a while.
I am sorry, I'll be quick. Nancy Tuttle had asked about development behind her property. You had mentioned that that would be parkland. I don't have that indicated on the map that I have. Is there a map available that has the parkland or that 10-acre donation indicated on?
I believe as part of their conceptual presentation, which Supervisor Iguadio mentioned, the owner of that parcel made during these 3 Zoom presentations, there was a conceptual plan presented. And, certainly we can ask that they provide that plan for folks to view. It was presented publicly to nearby residents. So.
I think that would be important, and I'll be real quick. The rear buffer lands, I've noticed, like on the Dorrego property and across from the Newburgh Mall, the stripping of trees is just ridiculous. Is there an amendment that the town board or a law that you could pass prohibiting that type of stripping of the trees and actually leaving the natural buffer? In other words, if there's a 50-foot buffer, leave a 50-foot natural buffer with the old growth trees, rather than just have the machines that go in there and can remove 10 acres in a day. But that's all I have, and thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, I see Peter Zawitowski unmuted. Did you have a question, Peter? Just Carl Kaplan. There's a chance to unmute. Now there's a D Dosey in there. Oh, no. D Dosey, is that?
That's Darren Dosey, one of the engineers, I think, too.
Charles Thorne. If you have a comment, you're on mute. I see Carl unmuted.
All right. Hi, guys. Hi, this is Christine, Charles Thorne's wife. Thank you so much for all the comments. Thanks, my neighbors, for coming out. We love our neighborhood. It's been very interesting.
Christine, if we can have your address for the record, please.
Sure. We're at 4 Westwood Drive. Like Mr. Bruce said, we are in the area where the water flows. That's an issue. Concerned about the environment, concerned about quality of life. I hope this would benefit our neighborhood, but everything that I'm seeing or hearing, it doesn't seem like it will benefit our neighborhood. So that's all. It's just been very interesting listening to everybody. That's basically, I don't have any questions, just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's commented.
And thank you.
If someone, they have the name Zoom user, they'd like to, right, bro. If they want to, comment, they can unmute.
Who else you got, buddy?
All right, we have Kim, you want to unmute, now's the chance.
I didn't have any questions.
All right, thank you, Kim.
Okay, Carrie? You unmute. Okay.
Yes, I just do have one question. Since there's a school involved, what role does the school district have to play in this? Is there any type of requirement? Because I heard like substance abuse counseling center mentioned. Is the school district going to be involved at all?
I know the school district is involved in the informational hearings. Right, Mark, and they'll be involved at the end too.
Yeah, and just to clarify that reference, that is allowed in the current zoning. It's not something that's part of this zoning amendment.
Oh, no, I understand. I was just wondering if the school district has to be involved at all.
We would give them an opportunity just like everyone else, and we'll definitely keep them informed. And we've already been in touch with them, like I say, in the informational hearings, which took place last year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Mandel, if you'd like to speak, you can unmute.
Have a
Feedback on, you know why, if they're too close together, one's got to be on your phone.
sorry, I'm at 7 Rockwood Drive in Newburgh. So after the public hearing, what happens next? When is there a determination made after this hearing is over?
One thing our board does is not move too fast, but we will accumulate all the answers to all these questions, and then it'll be a town board decision if we want to move forward or not. If the project's built, there'll be public hearings at the town board level, at the planning board level. But that's basically where we're at.
I had a hard time hearing you, I'm sorry. What did you say, sir? Mr. Piaquati, can you stop? I didn't hear what you said. After the hearing is over, what happens next?
We would wait and see the questions answered. Then it would be up to the board if they want to move forward, if they think it's in their best interest or not, if they hear everyone's comments. And then it would go from there when we move forward with it. So I couldn't give you a date, as I said, we don't move too fast sometimes, but it would happen in the future sometime.
Okay. And then I would just also just like to say for the record that I appreciate that the meeting is on Zoom, although the sound quality is poor. At least you guys are trying. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have Nick Manoia. If you have any comment, you can unmute.
No comments, thank you.
Aubrey and Evie. If you have any comment, you can unmute.
No comment.
You got Dorothy.
No comment, thank you.
Mary O.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for you guys doing this meeting on Zoom. It's very helpful to see what's going on. And when more or less do you think you would have an answer for all of the residents that are here posting their questions? And we all want to know the outcome of this hearing. And thank you.
All right, thank you. We would should probably be at least 2 months out, I think. If we've done things quickly, we can have an answer.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we have iPhone, start with them, and also iPhone 2. iPhone or iPhone 2, if you'd like to comment, you can unmute. Oh, it is, right? One of them, yeah. There's another missing iPhone if they want to speak.
What else we got, Bobby?
Okay, it's Ani Barras. Any comment, you can unmute.
No comment.
Giovanni Lugo. If you have a comment, you can unmute.
Hello, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, so I just had a quick question. So as far as the decision that's gonna be made by you guys after this hearing, how do we, the residents, get notified? Do we get a letter?
It would be a town board agenda item. You would really have to just look at the homepage and check the agenda items. We're not gonna like do a mailing to tell them that we're moving forward or whatever, but we'd have to just check, and you should maybe sign up for those emails, townofnewburgh.org, and sign on to the newsletter. It's easier for you.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Giovanni? So we muted, so who else we have?
We have Laverne. If you have a comment or question, you can unmute.
Just real quick, I just hope that you guys really take into consideration about the true meaning of what you're trying to do is to improve the quality of life in the neighborhood, and look at it as a whole versus as individually, like individual sections on Route 17K, because whatever you put there is going to impact everyone in the community. It's going to impact the children and the seniors that are here. And to just look at it as putting a restaurant, like someone said, or a bar or something like that, or another truck stop or a commercial state or whatever, their commercial unit, it's going to impact us all negatively. And everybody just wants to have a better life, a better community, and you just take it into consideration and not have it like a big free-for-all of anyone who could come and give the money, and then you'll just let them build whatever they want to build there, you know. It needs to be something that's going to help the children and help the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
I think Kathy G. You have a comment or question, you can unmute.
Yes, my name is Kathy and I'm from 4 Arbor Drive. My husband has some concerns about building behind us. How far of a distance will the buildings be behind us? Also, the privacy, like Nancy Tuttle said earlier, will we have that privacy? We wouldn't want people who are living behind us to be overlooking the back, you know, at our home. Will there be something blocking the view? That's it.
And I think once again, that was brought up before, and I think we had mentioned it, you know, the person who brought it up, there was no construction behind them whatsoever. But that the view from your house or the buffer will definitely be taken into consideration. Now that you brought it up again.
She muted herself, so. So I think we have, there's a Vince. I'll try to unmute them, but that might be Vincent Dosey.
Yeah, another engineer, so I don't think he's gonna have.
So he won't. Probably won't mute, okay. I think that is everyone.
Really? Is that everyone on Zoom? I
Yes.
wonder if everybody would have came out tonight if we didn't do Zoom. Would they all be here? Mrs. Gagne, Mrs. Gagne, right, second half. We're gonna go to Mrs. Gagne because you had a question when Mark was speaking. I said,
It's a definitional, situational, so.
okay. Then we're going, hang on there, principal, hang on one second. You had your hand up first, now we're going to doubles in this room, but do you want to come up and ask us?
James Capriccio. So obviously a traffic study is pretty standard with this. At what point would that be done? Would it be done before the vote was taken on the Hamlet zoning or for specific? I believe you mentioned kind of worst case scenario for the land.
I think we'd have to be environmental lead agency.
Yeah, typically
Sorry.
with a rezoning measure, the governing board doesn't get into great detail with respect to project-specific impacts because it doesn't know what's going to be actually be constructed.
So that would
Once
be until
it establishes that framework for development. The board can, as part of its environmental review, it doesn't have to, but it can authorize a maximum build-out study with respect to the potential traffic impact of what could be built under the normal scenario with the zoning amendment and what could be built without the zoning amendment. So it will be a board determination once it assumes the lead agency as to whether to do that or not. With respect to specific projects, again, the planning board acting as lead agency does review traffic impacts and certainly frequently it acts for traffic studies over anything that's not simply a minor project.
And then one of the important things is that each of these parcels fronts on Route 17K. So the New York State Department of Transportation will also be an involved agency during the planning board review process. And they would be requesting similar traffic studies.
And then the second part of that is would the planning board or the board consider a study into the value impact on the homes in the neighborhood? I mean, I believe there's something like 160 homes in Colvin Park. We've got Holiday Park, we've got Fleetwood in very close proximity. And if, you know, a 40-unit apartment dwelling is built, I believe that should be taken into account what that's going to do. We have a quite senior neighborhood, and the impact on, you know, the value of their home at this stage in their life, and even growing families again, this could kind of potentially set people back decades.
They're good comments. Well, they're good comments. And until we become lead agency, I can't really say what studies we're going to do if we get to that point. But thank you for your comments, and I take it. Vito, if you can make it short.
Absolutely. First off, thank you for your reference to the drawing, except he has hair. I didn't want to say that. I go back from a senior citizen. Now I'm going to accept that. Two quick questions. The first, why would the town consider being the lead agency? What was the motivation? And I've seen a lot of these kinds of things done in a lot of circumstances. What are the advantages and disadvantages of you becoming the lead agency?
Well, when we say lead agency, it has to do with environmental impact. So we're the ones that are going to make this overlay. So we should be the ones who say, hey, let's do a study on this, study on that. That's the end reason.
Normally,
turn it to the planning board.
the town doesn't do that. Normally, someone who's going to profit by construction and development is the person that comes in and asks that. None of the citizens here have asked for a rezoning. We like it the way it is, residential. That's number one. And we like the areas that are there the way they are, other than the adult situation, which has not necessarily ever been included in hamlets in the true definition. Maybe someplace in England, maybe there was one. So the first question is, why would you do that? And why would you not consider giving that responsibility over to someone who comes and petitions you so that there's an extra person involved to pick up the burden? That was my first question. My second question is, based on everything I've heard tonight, I have seen no advantage for the residents of Colden Park. We have no access into quote this park that's going to be developed or recreation area. There's no one's going to walk to any of these places. and all I have heard is negatives. And my question would be, why would the town consider this circumstance based on what we see as just negatives, other than tax revenue? Those are my two questions.
Thank you. All right, anyone else for doubles? Seeing none. I'm gonna ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Luciano?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio?
Yes. Then I'm gonna ask for a motion for a recess. Maybe 5 minutes.
So moved. I'll second that.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Luciano?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio?
Yes, thank you everyone for coming out, those on Zoom.
And happy Valentine's Day. It's almost over.